The night Evelyn Mercer's father shoved her into a stranger's car to settle his debts, she thought she knew what fear was. She was wrong. The man waiting in that darkened palazzo, Adrian Valtieri, didn't want money. He wanted her. Not for ransom, not for revenge, for reasons far more twisted and dangerous than she could imagine. What started as a transaction became obsession. What felt like captivity became something she couldn't name. And when the truth finally surfaced, Evelyn realized the most terrifying thing wasn't being trapped. It was no longer wanting to escape. Stay with me until the end, hit that like button, and comment your city so I can see how far this story reaches. The first rule Evelyn Mercer learned about survival was this: never answer the door after midnight. She'd broken that rule exactly once in her 30 years, and it had cost her everything. The restoration studio smelled like linseed oil and centuries-old varnish, the kind of scent that clung to her clothes and made taxi drivers wrinkle their noses. Evelyn didn't mind. She'd rather smell like her work than the stale cigarette smoke that had perfumed her childhood, back when her father still pretended to be someone worth knowing. She was hunched over a 17th century Madonna when her phone buzzed. The number wasn't saved, but she recognized the pattern: her father's latest burner. He went through them like tissue paper, discarding each one the moment whatever scheme he was running went south. She let it ring out. The Madonna's face was half-cleaned, revealing blues and golds that hadn't seen light in 200 years. Evelyn's hands were steady as she worked, the magnifying lamp casting harsh shadows across the cracked paint. This was her world now, quiet, controlled, far from the chaos that had defined the first 18 years of her life. The phone buzzed again. Then again. On the fourth call, she answered. "I told you not to contact me." Evie. Her father's voice cracked on her name. Marcus Mercer had always been a showman, all charm and easy lies, but this was different. This was raw panic. "Evie, baby, please, don't call me that. I need you to listen. I need—" A crash in the background, glass breaking, her father's sharp intake of breath. "They're here. Oh, Christ, they're here." Evelyn's hand tightened on the phone. "Who's there? What did you do?" "I can't. There's no time. You need to run on. Right now. Don't go home. Don't—" The line went dead. She sat frozen, phone pressed to her ear, listening to silence. The Madonna stared up at her with one cleaned eye and one still obscured by centuries of grime, as if caught between two worlds. Evelyn should have hung up, should have blocked the number and gone back to work. Instead, she was already grabbing her jacket. The apartment building where her father lived, if you could call it living, was in Trastevere, tucked down an alley most tourists never found. Evelyn had been there exactly twice since moving to Rome, both times to tell him she wanted nothing to do with whatever con he was running. She took a taxi, watching the ancient streets blur past. Rome at 1 in the morning was a different city, all shadows and amber streetlights, the kind of beauty that could hide 1,000 sins. The driver dropped her at the corner. She paid cash and watched him disappear before approaching the building. The front door hung open. Evelyn's pulse kicked up, but she moved forward anyway, taking the stairs 2 at a time. Her father's apartment was on the 3rd floor, door ajar, light spilling into the hallway. "Dad?" No answer. She pushed the door wider. The apartment had been destroyed. Not searched, destroyed. Furniture overturned, cushions slashed, even the floorboards pried up in places. In the center of the chaos, her father sat in the only remaining chair, head in his hands. "You shouldn't have come." His voice was hollow. "What happened? Who did this?" Marcus looked up, and Evelyn felt something cold slide down her spine. Her father had always been handsome in a weathered way, the kind of man who could talk his way out of anything. But the person staring at her now was a stranger, eyes wild, face pale, hand shaking. "I made a mistake," he said. "A big one." "What kind of mistake?" "The kind you don't walk away from." He stood, swaying slightly. "The kind that comes with interest." Evelyn backed toward the door. "I'm calling the police." "No!" He lunged forward, grabbing her wrist. "You can't. They own the police. They own everything." "Who? Who are you talking about?" Before he could answer, footsteps echoed in the hallway. Not the shuffle of an old resident or the quick click of high heels. These were measured, deliberate. The footsteps of someone who had all the time in the world and knew it. Marcus's grip tightened. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, baby. 3 men entered the apartment. The first 2 were obvious muscle, broad-shouldered, dark suits, the kind of men who made their living with their fists. But it was the 3rd man who made Evelyn's breath catch. He was younger than she expected, maybe late 30s, with dark hair and features that belonged on a Renaissance sculpture. Handsome in a way that felt dangerous, like a blade hidden in silk. His suit probably cost more than her entire year's rent, and he wore it with the casual ease of someone who'd never had to think about money. When his eyes found hers, she felt stripped bare. Marcus? The man's voice was smooth, accent placing him as Roman born and bred. You've been avoiding my calls. I needed more time. Her father's voice cracked. Just another week, and I can... You've had 6 months. The man stepped into the apartment, hands in his pockets, surveying the destruction with mild interest. My patience, as it turns out, is not infinite. I can get you the money, I swear. Yes, I'm sure you can. The man's gaze slid back to Evelyn. Who's this? No one. She's no one. She just... My daughter. The man smiled, and it was the most terrifying thing Evelyn had ever seen. Evelyn, isn't it? The art restorer. You have a studio near Piazza Navona. You walk to work most mornings, stop at the same cafe for espresso. You live alone. Ice flooded her veins. How do you... I make it my business to know things. He took another step closer, especially about assets that might prove valuable. Marcus moved between them. Please. She has nothing to do with this. On the contrary. The man gestured, and one of his companions produced a tablet, pulling up what looked like financial records. Your debt currently stands at 400,000 euros. With interest. That's quite a sum for a man who hasn't had legitimate employment in 15 years. I'll pay it back. Every cent. I'm sure you believe that. The man's attention never left Evelyn. But I've learned that faith in debtors is a poor investment strategy. I prefer tangible collateral. Understanding hit her like a physical blow. No. I'm afraid your father has left me with limited options. I could take his life, but a dead man pays no debts. I could break his bones systematically until he begs me to kill him, but that seems inefficient. He tilted his head. Or I could accept alternative compensation. She's not compensation, Marcus's voice rose. She's my daughter. She's a bargaining chip who happens to share your DNA. Don't romanticize it. The man pulled out his phone, typed something, then showed it to Marcus. These are the terms, non-negotiable, as Evelyn watched her father's face crumple. No, please, not this. Then I'll take my payment in blood, starting with yours, ending with hers. Choose quickly. My evening is already running long. What terms? Evelyn's voice came out stronger than she felt. What is he talking about? The man finally looked directly at her, and she saw something flicker behind those cold eyes. Interest. Assessment. Something that made her skin crawl. Your father owes me a debt he cannot pay. Therefore, you will come with me. You will remain under my supervision until such time as your value equals what is owed. That's insane. You can't just, I can, I will. And if you run, if you fight, if you do anything other than walk out that door with me right now, I will make your father's death last 3 days. I'll send you videos. He said it like he was discussing the weather. Do we have an understanding? Evelyn looked at her father, this man who'd given her nothing but chaos and disappointment, who'd abandoned her to foster care when she was 16, who'd reappeared in her life only when he needed something. She should tell this stranger to go to hell, should run, should scream. Instead, she heard herself say, if I go with you, his debt is paid? Evelyn, no. If I go with you, she repeated, voice shaking. He's free? The man studied her for a long moment. Yes, you have my word. Your word means nothing. Perhaps, but it's all you have. He extended his hand. My name is Adrian Valtieri, and you now belong to me. She didn't take his hand, didn't move, just stared at this stranger who'd walked into her life and ripped it apart in under 5 minutes. How long? She managed. Pardon? How long until my value equals the debt? Adrian smiled again, and this time there was something almost amused in it. That depends entirely on how you choose to define value, Miss Mercer. Shall we find out? He gestured to the door. One of his men moved to take her arm, but Adrian held up a hand. She'll walk on her own, won't you? It wasn't really a question. Evelyn looked at her father one last time. He was crying, which was somehow worse than everything else. Marcus Mercer had never cried, not when her mother left, not when he'd signed away his parental rights, not during any of the chaos he'd created. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry. She wanted to scream at him, wanted to hit him, wanted to do anything but what she was about to do. Instead, she walked to the door. Adrian fell into step beside her, his presence overwhelming in the narrow hallway. He smelled like expensive cologne and something darker, something that made her think of storms. Smart choice, he said quietly. I didn't have a choice. Everyone has a choice. You chose to save a man who's done nothing but fail you. That's interesting? He's my father. Biology isn't loyalty. They descended the stairs in silence. A black Mercedes waited at the curb, engine running. One of Adrian's men opened the back door. Evelyn hesitated. Second thoughts? Adrian asked. Will he be safe? Your father? Yes. I keep my word even when dealing with degenerates. He gestured to the car. After you. She climbed in. The interior was all leather and dark wood, the kind of luxury she'd only seen in magazines. Adrian slid in beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. The car pulled away from the curb. Evelyn watched Rome slide past the window. The city she'd made her home, the life she'd carefully constructed, all of it disappearing into the night. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out, saw messages from her assistant asking about tomorrow's schedule. You won't be needing that? Adrian plucked the phone from her hands before she could react, powered it down, removed the SIM card with practiced efficiency. You're off the grid now. People will look for me. Will they? From what I understand, you're quite private. Few friends, no family except a father you avoid. Your assistant can handle the studio. Who else will miss you? The truth of it stung. Evelyn had built her isolation carefully, brick by brick, after years of chaos. Now it was a cage. Where are we going? Home. My home. Adrian leaned back, studying her with those unsettling eyes. You'll have your own rooms, quite comfortable actually. There are rules, of course. You'll learn them. And if I break these rules, then we'll discuss consequences. I find physical punishment crude, but effective when necessary. Her stomach twisted. You're going to hurt me. I'm going to teach you. He said it like there was a difference. Pain is an excellent instructor, but I prefer subtler methods. Fear, for instance. Anticipation. The unknown can be far more persuasive than a fist. You're insane. I'm practical. The car turned down a narrow street, then through a gate that opened automatically. Your father made a deal with people he should have avoided. Those people came to me when he couldn't pay. I could have refused. It's not my debt, after all. But I saw an opportunity. For what? Adrian's smile was sharp. You'll find out. The car stopped in a courtyard lit by subtle landscape lighting. Evelyn caught glimpses of ancient stone, manicured gardens, a fountain with water that caught the moonlight. It was beautiful in a way that felt wrong, like a museum she wasn't supposed to touch. Welcome to Palazzo Valtieri, Adrian said. Your new home. She didn't move. This is kidnapping. This is debt collection. The law sees a significant difference. The law doesn't apply to me. He opened his door, then offered his hand again. Come, I'll show you to your rooms. Evelyn ignored the hand and climbed out on her own. The night air was cool, carrying the scent of jasmine and old stone. The palazzo rose 3 stories, windows dark except for a few showing warm light. Adrian led her through a side entrance, down a hallway lined with artwork that made her restorer's eye twitch. A Caravaggio. A Bernini sketch. Pieces that belonged in museums. You notice the art, he observed. Hard not to. Most people walk past without a second glance, but you see it. See the work, the history. He paused at a painting, Madonna and Child, definitely 16th century. What do you think? I think it's stolen. Acquired. There's a difference. Not to the museum it was taken from. Adrian laughed, the sound surprising her. I like you, Miss Mercer. You have spine. That will make this more interesting. They climbed a curved staircase to the second floor. Adrian opened a door, gestured her inside. The room was larger than her entire apartment. Four-poster bed, antique furniture, French doors that opened onto a balcony, luxurious and beautiful and absolutely a prison. The bathroom is through there, Adrian pointed. Clothes in the wardrobe should fit. I had your measurements taken. Evelyn's skin crawled. When? Does it matter? You have everything you need. Food will be brought up in the morning. The door's locked from the outside, but there's a panic button beside the bed. If you need anything urgently, press it. Like help escaping? Like medical attention if you hurt yourself trying. He moved to the door. Sleep. Tomorrow we begin. Begin what? He paused, and for the first time she saw something almost human in his expression. Not kindness. Adrian Valtieri didn't seem capable of kindness, but perhaps curiosity. Your education, he said. Good night, Miss Mercer. The door closed. A lock clicked. Evelyn stood frozen in the center of the room, heart hammering, mind racing through possibilities. The windows? But they were 3 stories up. No trellis, no balcony access to anywhere except a sheer drop. The door was solid wood, the kind that wouldn't budge even if she threw herself at it. She was truly trapped. Her legs gave out and she sank onto the bed, which was obscenely comfortable, the kind of comfort that felt like mockery. What had she done? She should have run, should have called the police, should have done anything except get in that car, but then Adrian would have killed her father. Marcus Mercer was a liar, a con artist, a man who'd failed her in every way that mattered, but he was still her father. And despite everything, despite years of telling herself she felt nothing for him, she couldn't watch him die. So now she was here, in a palazzo that belonged in a fairy tale, owned by a man who collected art and debt with equal precision. Evelyn moved to the French doors, tested them, locked. Through the glass, she could see the courtyard below, gardens beyond. It should have been peaceful. Instead, it felt like a graveyard. Her reflection stared back at her, brown hair pulled into a messy bun, paint-stained jeans, oversized sweater. She looked exactly like what she was, ordinary, unremarkable. Nothing that would catch a man like Adrian Valtieri's attention. Yet he'd known about her, known her routine, her address, her measurements. I saw an opportunity. What kind of opportunity? Exhaustion hit her suddenly, adrenaline crash leaving her hollow. Evelyn kicked off her shoes, climbed under the covers still fully dressed. The sheets were Egyptian cotton, probably thread count in the thousands. She should be planning escape, should be thinking 3 steps ahead. Instead, she closed her eyes and tried to remember what her life had been 24 hours ago. Quiet studio. Careful routine. The Madonna's face slowly revealing itself under patient hands. All of it gone. She didn't sleep so much as drift in and out of awareness, every sound making her jolt. Footsteps in the hallway. A door closing somewhere below. The old building settling into itself. When dawn light finally crept through the windows, Evelyn gave up pretending. She showered in the marble bathroom, using products that probably cost more than her weekly grocery budget. Found clothes in the wardrobe, all in her size, all expensive, all chosen by someone who knew her measurements better than she did. She dressed in jeans and a simple blouse, some small rebellion against the silk and cashmere on offer. The door unlocked at exactly 8 o'clock. Evelyn tensed, but it wasn't Adrian who entered. A woman in her 50s, gray hair pulled back, carrying a breakfast tray. Good morning, Miss Mercer. I'm Teresa. I manage the household. She set the tray on a small table near the window. Mr. Valtieri asks that you join him in his study at 9. And if I don't? Teresa's expression didn't change. Then he'll come get you. I suggest eating. It may be a long day. She left without waiting for a response. The breakfast was continental, pastries, fruit, espresso that smelled like heaven. Evelyn's stomach growled despite everything. She forced herself to eat, needing the energy, needing to think clearly. At 8:55, she left the room. The hallway was empty, but she found the stairs easily enough. The palazzo was a maze of corridors and rooms, but something pulled her toward the sound of music, classical, something Baroque she didn't recognize. Adrian's study was on the first floor, door half open. She knocked. Enter. He sat behind a massive desk, sunlight streaming through windows that overlooked the gardens. Today he wore a different suit, charcoal gray, no tie. He looked like he'd slept well, which made Evelyn irrationally angry. Punctual, he observed. Good. Sit. There was a chair across from his desk. She remained standing. Adrian sighed. Must we do this the hard way? You kidnapped me. There is no easy way. I claimed collateral on a debt. Semantics matter. He closed the laptop he'd been working on. But fine, stand if it makes you feel powerful. We have things to discuss. Like when you're letting me go. Optimistic, I like that. He stood, moving to a sideboard where a coffee service waited. Poured 2 cups without asking if she wanted one. Your value, as discussed, equals your father's debt. 400,000 euros plus interest accruing daily. At current rates, that's roughly 450,000 total. That's insane. I'm a restorer. I make decent money, but I'm not interested in your salary. He handed her a cup. I'm interested in your skills. She took the coffee reflexively. What are you talking about? You restore art. Quite well, from what I understand. Your work on the Bellini Madonna last year was exceptional. The museum didn't even realize half of it was your reconstruction. Despite everything, pride flickered. How did you... I know many things, Miss Mercer, including the fact that your talents are currently being wasted on legitimate work. He returned to his desk. I have a proposition. I'm not doing anything illegal. You haven't heard the proposition. I don't need to. The answer is no. Adrian's smile was patient. You misunderstand your position. This isn't a negotiation, but I'm offering you a path to clearing your father's debt faster than sitting in that room for the next decade. That caught her attention. How much faster? That depends on how skilled you are and how cooperative. He pulled out a folder, slid it across the desk. I acquire things. Art, antiquities, items of value. Some of these items require restoration, authentication, expertise. Evelyn didn't touch the folder. You want me to help you sell stolen art. I want you to help me move pieces between private collectors who value discretion over provenance. That's the same thing. The law disagrees. Private sales are perfectly legal. Not if the items are stolen. Prove they're stolen. Adrian's eyes glinted. That's the beauty of the art world, Miss Mercer. Ownership is 9/10 possession. If I have a piece, and you restore it beautifully, and I sell it to someone who doesn't ask too many questions, where's the crime? In the theft, which I didn't commit. I simply acquire items from people who need to sell quickly. If their ownership is questionable, well, I'm not a detective. Evelyn's hands tightened on the cup. I won't help you. Then you'll stay in that room until you change your mind, or until your father's debt equals your perceived value through other means. He leaned back. I should mention that I have diverse business interests, some more savory than others. The art is actually my cleanest operation. The implication hung in the air. You're threatening me. I'm explaining reality. You're a beautiful woman, alone, with skills I can monetize in multiple ways. I'd prefer to use your restoration expertise. It's cleaner, more profitable long-term. But if you refuse, he shrugged. There are always alternatives. Ice slid down her spine. You wouldn't. I would, but I'd rather not. As I said, I prefer subtlety to force. He gestured to the folder. Look at the project. One piece. Restore it. Authenticate it. Help me move it to a buyer. If you do well, we'll discuss how much that reduces your father's debt. And if I refuse? We've established what happens then. Evelyn wanted to throw the coffee in his face. Wanted to scream. Wanted to do anything except stand there feeling helpless. Instead, she opened the folder. The photograph showed a painting, 17th century, possibly Artemisia Gentileschi, based on the dramatic lighting and composition. A woman holding a sword, face fierce. Beautiful work, even in the photo. Where did you get this? Does it matter? Yes. Why? Because if it's stolen from a museum, there will be records, alerts. If I'm caught with it, you won't be caught. I'm very good at what I do. Adrian stood, came around the desk. Too close. The piece came from a private estate. No museums involved. No international alerts. Just a family selling off assets before creditors come calling. That doesn't make it legal. It doesn't make it your problem either. Restore it, make it beautiful, help me sell it. That's all I'm asking. You're not asking. No, he agreed. I'm not. They stood there inches apart, and Evelyn felt the weight of her situation crash down. She had no phone, no way to contact anyone. She was in a palazzo owned by a man with resources she couldn't begin to match. Even if she escaped, what then? Run to the police? Tell them what? That her father sold her to pay a debt? They'd laugh her out of the station. Or worse, they'd investigate and find out Adrian owned half the force. How much? Her voice came out steadier than she felt. If I restore this piece, how much does it reduce the debt? 50,000 euros, assuming the buyer is satisfied. That's barely a tenth. Then you'll have to work quickly, efficiently. He returned to his desk, pulled out a contract. These are the terms. You'll work in a studio I'll provide. All materials, all tools. When the piece is complete, I'll arrange the sale. You'll be present to authenticate. I could run. You could try. He signed the contract, slid it across. But I'd find you, and then we'd have a different conversation about your value. Evelyn stared at the paper. This was insane. She should refuse, should fight. But if she fought, she'd lose. Adrian had made that clear. If she cooperated, at least she'd have some agency. Some small measure of control. And maybe, while she worked, she could find a way out. She picked up the pen and signed. Adrian's smile was satisfied. Excellent. Your studio is on the 3rd floor. Everything you need is there. You'll start today. I need to see the piece first, examine it properly. Of course. I'll have it brought up. He pressed a button on his desk, spoke briefly in Italian to whoever answered. Anything else? Yeah, what happens when the debt is paid? You go free. Completely. I'll even give you a letter of reference for future restoration work. I'm supposed to believe that? Believe what you want, but I keep my word. He met her eyes. Always. There was something in his voice, not quite sincerity, but perhaps truth. Adrian Valtieri might be a criminal, but he seemed to have his own code. That would have to be enough. Can I ask you something? Evelyn said. You can ask. I may not answer. Why me? There are thousands of art restorers in Rome. Why go through all this for... Because you're good. Adrian cut her off. Because you're talented, isolated, and compromised by your father's debts. Because I saw an opportunity, and I took it. He tilted his head. Does that satisfy your curiosity? No? Good. Mystery keeps things interesting. He gestured to the door. Teresa will show you to your studio. I'll join you later to discuss the project in detail. Dismissed. Like a servant. Evelyn left before she said something that would make things worse. The studio took her breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows, perfect northern light, work tables, magnification equipment, chemical storage, ventilation, everything she'd ever dreamed of having in her cramped Navona workshop. Supplies organized with precision. Even a small sitting area with a couch and coffee maker. It was perfect. She hated it. Teresa appeared in the doorway. Mr. Valtieri spares no expense when he wants something done properly. Your piece will be here within the hour. Lucky me. The older woman's expression softened slightly. He's not a bad man, Miss Mercer. Just a complicated one. He kidnapped me. He claimed a debt. There's precedent, even if it's outdated. Teresa moved to the windows, adjusted one of the blinds. My advice? Do good work. Don't fight him on everything. And remember that prison bars aren't always visible. That's supposed to be comforting. It's supposed to be practical. You want to survive this? Learn when to bend. She paused at the door. Lunch is at 1. Dinner at 8. If you need anything, there's an intercom. She left Evelyn alone with the view and her thoughts. Through the windows, Rome sprawled in afternoon light. Somewhere out there was her studio, her apartment, her carefully constructed life. All of it unreachable now. Evelyn moved to the work table, ran her hands over the smooth surface. This should be a dream. Any restorer would kill for access to equipment like this. Instead, it felt like a caller. The painting arrived 30 minutes later, carried by 2 men who didn't make eye contact. They set it on an easel, left without a word. Evelyn approached slowly. The photograph hadn't done it justice. Even under years of grime and cracked varnish, the woman in the painting burned with life. Judith holding the head of Holofernes, triumph and horror warring on her face. Definitely Gentileschi. The artist's signature intensity practically vibrated off the canvas. She pulled out her loupe, examined the brushwork. Original? No question. Possibly undocumented. If this was real, if it was truly a lost Gentileschi, it was worth millions. And Adrian wanted her to restore it so he could sell it on the black market. Evelyn closed her eyes, tried to think. If she refused, he'd find other ways to extract value from her, ways that didn't involve art. If she cooperated, at least she'd be doing what she loved, and maybe she could find a way to alert authorities, to get this piece back where it belonged. It wasn't much of a plan, but it was all she had. She was setting up her workstation when Adrian returned. "What do you think?" He moved to stand beside her, studying the painting. "I think if this is genuine, it belongs in a museum. Museums are prisons for art. This piece will go to someone who will love it, treasure it, actually look at it. Someone with questionable ethics and too much money." "Exactly." He smiled. "How long?" "To restore properly, 6 weeks, maybe 8. You have 4. That's not enough time to piss 4 weeks, Miss Mercer. The buyer is impatient." "You'll work as many hours as necessary." He checked his watch. "I'll leave you to it. Dinner is at 8. You'll join me." That wasn't a question either, was it? "You're learning." He headed for the door, paused. "Welcome to the team." When he was gone, Evelyn sank into the chair, staring at Judith's fierce face. "Well," she said to the painting, "at least one of us knows how to fight back." She picked up her tools and got to work. The first 3 days, Evelyn worked like a machine. Dawn to midnight, barely breaking for meals Teresa brought on a tray. She cleaned test sections of the painting, documented every layer of varnish, cataloged the damage with clinical precision. If she kept moving, kept her hands busy, she didn't have to think about where she was or why. Adrian appeared each evening around 7, always in a different suit, always with that same measured calm that made her want to scream. He'd watch her work for 20 minutes without speaking, then leave. No questions, no small talk, just his presence, heavy as a hand on her shoulder. On the 4th night, he broke the pattern. "You're avoiding the face." Evelyn didn't look up from the section of drapery she was cleaning. "I'm working systematically, background to foreground." "You're stalling." He moved closer, studying the painting over her shoulder. "The face is the hardest part, the most revealing. You're afraid you'll damage it." "I'm being careful." "You're being scared." He reached past her, finger hovering over Judith's half-cleaned cheek. "This is where the artist put her soul, where you'll either prove yourself or fail, and you don't like failing, do you, Miss Mercer?" She set down her brush, finally meeting his eyes. "What do you want?" "Dinner. Downstairs. Now." "I'm working." "You're hiding." Adrian stepped back. "Put your tools away. You have 5 minutes." He left before she could argue. Evelyn considered ignoring him. She could stay here, keep working, prove that his orders meant nothing. But Teresa's words echoed back. "Learn when to bend. Pick your battles." She washed her hands, removed her work smock, and headed downstairs. The dining room made her studio look modest. Vaulted ceilings, a table that could seat 20, candelabras casting warm light over what was probably priceless china. Adrian sat at one end, wine glass in hand, looking like he belonged in a painting himself. "Sit." He gestured to the chair at his right, not the opposite end. Close enough to talk. A man in server's whites appeared, placing soup in front of her, something with seafood smelling rich and complex. "I don't understand this," Evelyn said. "The soup, it's this, the dinners, the nice room, the pretense of civility." She pushed the bowl away. "You kidnapped me. Why pretend otherwise?" Adrian took a slow sip of wine. "I claimed collateral. We've established this. Semantics. Important semantics." He set down his glass. "I could have locked you in a basement with nothing but bread and water. I could have chained you to the work table. I could have done many things that would make the situation significantly worse. Instead, I'm offering you a comfortable room, excellent food, and the opportunity to do work you're exceptional at. The least you can do is eat the soup." "Why?" "Because Chef will be offended if..." Why are you doing any of this? Evelyn leaned forward. You want art restored. Hire a restorer. You want someone to authenticate pieces, buy their expertise. Why go through the trouble of, she gestured around them, all of this? For the first time, Adrian's expression shifted. Not quite surprise, but something close, like he'd expected her to keep asking the wrong questions. Eat your soup, he said finally, and I'll tell you a story. She didn't move. He sighed. You want answers? Fine. But not on an empty stomach. Those are my terms. It was stupid to negotiate over soup, but Evelyn was learning that everything with Adrian was a negotiation, even when it looked like an order. She pulled the bowl back, took a spoonful. It was delicious, which made her irrationally angry. 3 years ago, Adrian began, I acquired a Bellini, 16th century exquisite condition. I had it authenticated by the best in Rome, had a buyer lined up for 6 million euros. The sale was days away when I discovered the authentication was fraudulent. The restorer I'd hired had covered up damage so severe it made the piece nearly worthless. So fire the restorer. I did, along with making sure he never worked again. Adrian's voice was casual, but something in it made her shiver. But the incident taught me that trust is the foundation of this business. I needed someone exceptional, someone I could control completely. And my father's debt gave you leverage. Your father's debt gave me an opening, but I'd been watching you for months before he came to me. The soup turned to lead in her stomach. What? 6 months ago, I saw your work on the Bellini Madonna. Brilliant restoration, nearly invisible. I made inquiries, learned about your background. Orphaned at 16, father in and out of trouble, built a career from nothing through pure skill. He smiled. I found that fascinating. You researched me. I research everyone who interests me. When I discovered your father owed money to associates of mine, I saw an opportunity. So I waited. And eventually, Marcus came looking for more money from the wrong people. People who report to me. Evelyn's hands shook. You orchestrated this. His debt, the deadline, all of it. I expedited circumstances already in motion. Marcus would have self-destructed regardless. I simply ensured it happened on my timeline. She shoved back from the table. You manipulated everything. I created an opportunity. There's a difference. There's not. Sit down, Miss Mercer. No, I'm done. I'm done with your games. Adrian moved fast. One moment he was seated, the next he was beside her, hand on her wrist. Not painful, but immovable. You're done when I say you're done. We have a contract. A contract signed under duress isn't legal. And who will you tell? The police who wouldn't care? The courts that would take years to maybe rule in your favor? His grip tightened slightly. You're in my home, under my protection, bound by your father's debt and your own signature. Running changes nothing except how pleasant I make the remainder of your stay. They stood frozen, inches apart, his hand on her wrist like a brand. Evelyn could feel his pulse steady and calm while hers raced. Let go of me. Will you sit? Let go. He released her, stepping back. You asked why I went through the trouble. Now you know. I wanted the best and I was willing to wait for the right circumstances to acquire you. He returned to his seat, picked up his wine glass like nothing had happened. The question now is whether you'll waste energy being outraged or accept reality and make the best of your situation. Evelyn wanted to throw something, wanted to run, wanted to do anything except stand there feeling like a chess piece someone else had been moving for months. Instead, she sat back down. Adrian's approving nod made her want to hit him. Good. Now eat. You're too thin. I'm fine. You're pale and you've lost weight since arriving. Teresa reports you barely touch your meals. He gestured, and the server appeared with the next course. You'll eat properly, or I'll have you monitored. Your choice. Everything's my choice, apparently, as long as I choose what you want. Now you're learning. Adrian cut into his fish. Tell me about the gentileschi. Honest assessment. Is it genuine? The shift in topic gave her whiplash, but Evelyn forced herself to focus. This, at least, was familiar ground. The brushwork is consistent with her authenticated pieces. The composition, the dramatic lighting, the way she painted women, all signature elements. She pushed food around her plate. But I'd need to do pigment analysis, canvas dating, provenance research before I'd stake my reputation on it. Your reputation is currently in my hands, but I appreciate thoroughness. He studied her. You love the work. Even now, even angry, you lit up talking about it. It's a beautiful piece. It's a beautiful piece you think I stole. Didn't you? I acquired it from someone who needed cash quickly. The original theft, if there was one, happened decades ago. Possibly longer. I'm simply moving it to someone who'll appreciate it more than creditors would. That's still legal in most circumstances, yes. Adrian set down his fork. The art world is built on polite fictions, Miss Mercer. Museums display pieces with questionable provenance all the time. Private collectors trade works that pass through Nazi hands, colonial plunder, disputed estates. I'm simply more honest about the gray areas. Honest, right. I don't pretend my hands are clean. That's more than most can say. He leaned back. Finish your wine. You look like you need it. She did, hating that he was right. The wine was excellent, of course. Everything in this palazzo was excellent, which somehow made it worse. Can I ask you something? Evelyn said. You can ask. When the debt is paid, will you really let me go? Adrian was quiet for a long moment. Yes. Just like that? Just like that. I'm a criminal, Miss Mercer, not a monster. I keep my agreements. He paused. Though I suspect by the time you're free, you won't want to leave. You're insane. I'm observant. You're already more comfortable here than you were 3 days ago. You stopped checking the door locks this morning. You've started arranging your studio the way you like it. Small adaptations, but telling ones. The accuracy of it stung. That's called survival. That's called acceptance. And it's the first step toward something more interesting. There's nothing interesting about being a prisoner. Then consider yourself a guest with limited options. Adrian stood. Finish your meal. Tomorrow you'll start on Judith's face. I want to see real progress by week's end. He left her alone with half a plate of food and a head full of noise. Evelyn sat there until the wine was gone and the candles had burned low. Teresa appeared eventually, silent as always, and cleared the table. The older woman paused at the door. He means what he says, you know, about keeping his word. How would you know? I've worked for the Valtieri family for 30 years. I knew Adrian's father, his grandfather. The men in this family are many things, but liars isn't one of them. She hesitated. Get some rest, Miss Mercer. Tomorrow will be harder. Evelyn climbed the stairs to her room, exhausted but too wired to sleep. She stood at the French doors, looking out at Rome's lights scattered below like fallen stars. Adrian had orchestrated everything, had watched her, researched her, waited for the perfect moment to pull her into his orbit. The violation of it made her skin crawl. But beneath the anger was something else, something she didn't want to name. He'd seen her work and called it brilliant, had built her a studio that made her old workspace look like a closet, had created circumstances that were horrifying but also, in some twisted way, validating. Someone powerful thought she was worth this much trouble. That shouldn't matter. But it did. Evelyn pressed her forehead against the glass, trying to remember who she'd been 4 days ago. The quiet woman who walked to work, restored paintings, went home to an empty apartment, safe, invisible, alone. She'd built that life deliberately, brick by careful brick, after years of chaos. No attachments, no risks, no one who could hurt her. And now she was trapped with a man who'd torn through her defenses like they were tissue paper. Sleep came eventually, fractured and full of dreams she couldn't quite remember. The next morning, Evelyn approached Judith's face with hands that only shook a little. Adrian was right. This was the test. The place where an artist's skill showed most clearly and where a restorer's mistakes became most obvious. She mixed her solution, tested it on an inconspicuous corner, and began to work. The first layer of grime came away easily. The second required more care. By the third, she could see the original paint emerging, flesh tones that seemed to glow, eyes that held centuries of determination and fear. Gentileschi had painted herself into this Judith. Every historian knew the story. The artist, raped and humiliated, pouring her rage into depictions of women taking vengeance. This painting wasn't just beautiful, it was personal, raw. Incredible, isn't she? Evelyn jumped, nearly dropping her brush. Adrian stood in the doorway, watching. You need to stop sneaking up on me. I walk normally. You were absorbed. He moved to stand beside her work table. How long have you been at it? She glanced at the clock. Nearly 4 hours had passed. I didn't realize you lose time when you work. Teresa mentioned it. Adrian studied the painting. She's magnificent. The fury in her eyes. You can feel her triumph. And her horror. She's killed a man. Even justified vengeance has a cost. You think Judith felt horror? I think Gentileschi understood that violence changes you, even when it's necessary. Evelyn set down her brush. She painted what she knew. Adrian was quiet for a moment. You know the story. About the rape. The trial. Every art historian does. And yet museums display her work without discussing the context. They show Judith beheading Holofernes and call it biblical, when really it's personal testimony. He tilted his head. At least when I sell this, the buyer will know exactly what they're getting. Truth, not sanitized history. The buyer will get a stolen painting. The buyer will get a masterpiece that would otherwise rot in someone's storage unit. Adrian checked his watch. I have a meeting. Don't work too long. You're no good to me exhausted. Your concern is touching. My concern is practical. But take it however you want. He paused at the door. Dinner is at 8. Don't make me come get you. After he left, Evelyn tried to focus on the painting, but her concentration was shot. She cleaned her brushes, documented her progress, then wandered to the windows. From here she could see the palazzo's gardens, formal hedges, gravel paths, a fountain with some classical statues she'd need binoculars to identify. Beautiful, peaceful, completely at odds with the man who owned it. Adrian Valtieri was a walking contradiction. Criminal who quoted art history. Kidnapper who provided gourmet meals. Manipulator who seemed genuinely interested in her work. She should hate him completely. And she did. Mostly. But there were moments, like when he talked about Gentileschi's rage, or when he'd called her restoration brilliant, where she saw something else. Not kindness exactly, but recognition. Like he understood something about her that she barely understood herself. That was dangerous. Evelyn forced herself back to work, losing herself in the careful process of revealing what had been hidden. By the time Teresa called her for dinner, Judith's face was half cleaned, the warrior's expression emerging with devastating clarity. Adrian was already seated when she arrived, reading something on his phone. He looked up, smiled. You're on time. I'm impressed. I'm hungry. Don't read into it. Of course not. He gestured for her to sit. How was your day? The normalcy of the question was absurd, like they were colleagues or friends, not captor and captive. Productive, she said finally. The face is revealing itself. Another few days and I'll have that section complete. Good. The buyer is getting impatient. Wine appeared at her elbow, poured by invisible hands. Tell me something, Miss Mercer. If you weren't here, if circumstances were different, would you want to work on a piece like this? In a museum, with proper provenance, absolutely. But the work itself, the challenge, the artistry, would you want it? Evelyn considered lying, then didn't. Yes. Then enjoy it. Regardless of the circumstances, you're doing something exceptional. While being held prisoner, while clearing a debt and practicing your craft at the highest level. Perspective matters. Adrian set down his phone. You could choose to be miserable every moment you're here, or you could choose to find something worth valuing in the experience. The outcome is the same either way. Easy for you to say, you're not the one being held. No, I'm the one holding, which comes with its own complications. Something flickered across his face, too quick to read. But we all have our cages, Miss Mercer. Some are just more visible than others. Before she could respond, the door burst open. A young man stumbled in, pale and sweating, one hand pressed to his side. He was maybe 25, with dark hair and features similar enough to Adrian's that the relationship was obvious. Lucas! Adrian was on his feet instantly. What happened? Nothing. I'm fine. But the younger man swayed, and when he moved his hand, Evelyn saw blood. Adrian caught him before he fell, easing him into a chair with surprising gentleness. Teresa! Medical kit? Now! The older woman appeared almost instantly, kit in hand, face tight with worry. Adrian pulled up Lucas's shirt, revealing a knife wound along his ribs. Not deep, but bleeding steadily. "The Corsini family's idea of a message," Lucas said, trying to smile. "They have opinions about the shipping routes." "I'll give them opinions." Adrian's voice was cold. "Teresa, pressure bandage. Lucas, hold still." "I'm fine, really. Just a scratch. You're bleeding on my Italian leather. Hold still." Evelyn stood frozen, watching this exchange. The care in Adrian's hands, the fear beneath his anger, the way Lucas looked at his brother with absolute trust, it was all wrong. She'd built Adrian into a monster in her head. Monsters didn't tend wounded siblings with gentle hands. Adrian glanced up, caught her staring. "Don't just stand there. First aid training any?" "Some. Basic." "Then make yourself useful. Grab the antiseptic from the kit." She moved on autopilot, finding the bottle, handing it over. Adrian cleaned the wound with efficient movements while Lucas hissed through his teeth. "This is why I told you not to meet them alone," Adrian said. "They said they wanted to talk. And you believed them? Christo, Lucas, you're smarter than this. They caught me off guard. Won't happen again." "It won't happen at all. You're staying here until this is resolved." Adrian finished bandaging the wound, then sat back. "Teresa, call Dr. Russo. Tell him it's urgent but not critical. And get Marco. I want security doubled." Teresa disappeared. Lucas leaned back in the chair, face gray. "Your dinner guest looks shocked," he observed, noticing Evelyn. "Not used to knife wounds over pasta?" "Not typically, no." "Welcome to the family business." Lucas tried for another smile. "I'm Lucas Valtieri, the handsome brother." "The reckless brother," Adrian corrected. "Miss Mercer is working on a project for me. She doesn't need to be involved in our other concerns." "Miss Mercer has eyes. I'm pretty sure she's already involved." Lucas studied her. "Art restorer, right? Adrian's been obsessed with finding someone exceptional. Guess he succeeded." "Lucas," Adrian's voice held warning. "What? It's a compliment." The younger man winced, pressing his hand to the bandage. "How's the Gentileschi coming?" Evelyn blinked. "How do you know about—" "I know everything that happens in this house." "Well, almost everything. Adrian likes his secrets." Lucas's eyes were sharp despite the pain. "Don't let him fool you. He's not as cold as he pretends." "That's enough." Adrian stood. "Dr. Russo will be here in 20 minutes. Until then, you rest. No arguments." "Fine, but only because I'm bleeding." Lucas pushed himself up carefully. "Nice meeting you, Miss Mercer. Try not to let my brother intimidate you too much. His bark is worse than his bite." "His bark kidnapped me." Lucas laughed, then winced. "Okay, fair point. But still, give him a chance. He's less terrible than you think." Adrian practically carried his brother out of the room. Evelyn stood alone, mind racing. Everything she'd assumed about Adrian was getting complicated. The cold criminal who collected art and people with equal dispassion. He'd just gone pale with worry over his brother. Had moved with practiced care like this wasn't the first time Lucas had shown up bleeding. She should be using this. A wounded brother meant distraction, maybe opportunity to escape. Instead, she found herself wondering what kind of message required a knife wound. Adrian returned 15 minutes later, looking exhausted in a way that made him suddenly seem human. "I apologize for the interruption." He sank into his chair, reached for his wine glass with a hand that wasn't quite steady. "Family matters." "Is he okay?" "He will be." Lucas has a gift for finding trouble. Adrian drained half the glass. "He's also dying, which makes his recklessness particularly infuriating." The words landed like a physical blow. "What?" "Genetic condition, heart and lungs. He has maybe 2 years, 3 if we're very lucky." Adrian's voice was flat, clinical. "The knife wound won't kill him, but it doesn't help." Evelyn didn't know what to say. "I'm sorry," felt inadequate. Silence felt cruel. "Everything I do," Adrian continued, staring at his wine, "every piece I move, every deal I make, every questionable decision, it's all to give him the best possible time he has left. To fund experimental treatments, to make sure he wants for nothing." He finally looked at her. "So when you wonder why I'm willing to manipulate circumstances to get what I need, that's why. I don't have the luxury of being a good man. I have to be an effective one." The honesty of it stunned her. This wasn't manipulation. This was exhaustion and fear and something raw that Adrian clearly didn't show often. "Does he know?" Evelyn asked quietly. "About the prognosis?" He knows. He just refuses to act like it matters. Adrian's jaw tightened, which is why he takes meetings alone with people who'd happily see both of us dead. The Corsini family. Competitors. They want control of shipping routes we've held for 3 generations. They're willing to shed blood for them. And you? I'm willing to shed more. He met her eyes. Does that shock you? I think I'm past being shocked by anything you do. Good. Shock is such a useless emotion. He stood, movement stiff. I need to make some calls. Finish your dinner if you want, or don't. Tomorrow we'll discuss timeline for the Gentileschi. I need it done faster than planned. Because of Lucas? Because of everything. He paused at the door. Thank you for helping tonight. I handed you antiseptic. You didn't have to. And then he was gone. Evelyn sat alone at the massive table, food gone cold, mind spinning. Adrian Valtieri had just shown her something real. Not the controlled businessman or the calculated criminal, just a man terrified of losing his brother. It should have changed nothing. He'd still orchestrated her captivity, still held her here against her will. But it changed something, some small crack in the wall she'd built against him. She pushed away from the table and climbed the stairs, trying not to think about what it meant that she was starting to see her captor as a person. The next 2 weeks blurred together in a rhythm Evelyn didn't want to admit was becoming comfortable. She'd wake early, work on the Gentileschi until her eyes burned, take meals with Adrian where they talked about everything except the fact that she was his prisoner. Lucas appeared at dinner most nights, charm and dark humor masking the pallor that crept deeper into his skin with each passing day. She learned things she didn't want to know. That Adrian took his coffee black and drank too much of it. That Lucas had studied architecture before his diagnosis derailed everything. That Teresa had raised both brothers after their mother died, and their father descended into the kind of grief that looked like rage. She learned the Palazzo's rhythms. Guard changes at 6 and midnight, deliveries Tuesday mornings, the hour between 2 and 3 a.m., when the building fell completely silent and Evelyn could pretend she was alone in the world. The Gentileschi was nearly complete. Judith's face blazed with restored fury, every brushstroke revealing Artemisia's genius and pain. It was the best work Evelyn had ever done, which felt like a betrayal of everything she believed in. On a Thursday night, 3 weeks into her captivity, Adrian summoned her to his study. She found him standing at the window, phone pressed to his ear, speaking rapid Italian she could only half follow. Something about shipments and routes and a name that made his voice go cold. Corsini. He ended the call when he noticed her, expression unreadable. The buyer arrives tomorrow night, he said without preamble. They want to see the piece, hear your authentication, ask questions. You'll be present. And if I refuse? You won't. Adrian moved to his desk, pulled out a folder. But if you try anything stupid, running, calling for help, alerting authorities, the deal I made with your father becomes void. Do you understand? Perfectly clear. Good. He slid the folder across. This is everything I have on the provenance. Study it. Know it. The buyer is sophisticated and will ask detailed questions. Evelyn opened the folder, scanning documents that were probably half forgery. Who is this buyer? Someone with money and discretion. That's all you need to know. If they're so sophisticated, they'll know this provenance is questionable. They'll know it's incomplete. There's a difference. Your job is to sell them on the restoration work, the authenticity of the piece itself. Let me handle the history. Adrian's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, jaw tightening. I need to handle something. We'll discuss details tomorrow. What's wrong? Nothing that concerns you. Lucas? Adrian's expression went carefully blank. He's fine. Just tired. The meeting tomorrow will stress him, but he insists on attending. He paused at the door. Get some rest. Tomorrow will be long. After he left, Evelyn sat with the folder, but couldn't focus on the forged documents. Something was shifting in the palazzo. She could feel it in the increased guard presence, the way Teresa moved through hallways with tight shoulders, the hushed phone calls that stopped when she entered rooms. She found Lucas in the library an hour later, sprawled in a leather chair, with a book he clearly wasn't reading. You look lost, he said. Join the club. Evelyn hesitated, then sat across from him. Are you okay? Adrian said you were tired. Adrian worries too much. I'm always tired these days. Lucas closed the book. But that's not why you're here. You want to know what's happening. Should I? Probably not. But I'm bored and you're interesting, so I'll tell you anyway. He leaned forward, wincing slightly. The Corsini family has decided they want more than shipping routes. They want Adrian's entire operation, and they're willing to burn everything to get it. Evelyn's stomach dropped. The knife wound was a love tap compared to what they're planning. They've made threats, explicit ones, against Adrian, against me, against anyone in this house. Lucas's smile was sharp. So tomorrow's buyer meeting, it's not just about selling art, it's about securing funds for a war. You can't be serious. Welcome to the family business. We're always serious, even when we're joking. He studied her. You care about what happens to Adrian. I can see it on your face. I don't. Please. I've watched you two at dinner, the way you light up when you talk about the painting, the way he actually smiles when you challenge him. Lucas's expression softened. You think you hate him. Maybe you do, but there's something else there too. He kidnapped me. He claimed a debt, and yeah, it's morally questionable at best, but he's also given you resources most restorers would kill for, treated you better than anyone he's ever brought into this house, and trusted you with information that could destroy him. Lucas coughed, hand pressed to his chest. My brother doesn't trust easily. The fact that he trusts you at all says something. It says he thinks I'm controllable. It says he sees something in you worth the risk. Lucas stood slowly. Tomorrow night, things might get complicated. If they do, stay close to Adrian. Whatever else he is, he'll keep you safe. Why are you telling me this? Because you're going to have a choice soon, and I want you to make it with actual information, not just anger. He moved to the door, stopped. For what it's worth, I hope you stay. This place has been less dark since you arrived. He left her alone with his words echoing in her head. That night, Evelyn couldn't sleep. She paced her room, then the studio, finally ending up in the garden despite the late hour. The fountain burbled quietly, stone nymphs frozen in eternal dance around its base. Couldn't sleep either? She spun to find Adrian emerging from the shadows, jacket discarded, shirt sleeves rolled up. He looked exhausted. I needed air, she said. Understandable. The palazzo can feel suffocating. He sat on the fountain's edge, stared at the water. Lucas told you about the Corsinis. He mentioned complications. That's diplomatic. Adrian laughed, the sound hollow. They've given me an ultimatum. Surrender half my operations or they start killing people I care about. They were very specific about the timeline. 3 days. What are you going to do? Fight. What else is there? He looked up at her. You should know tomorrow's meeting might go badly. If it does, Teresa has instructions to get you and Lucas somewhere safe. Why would you do that? Because you're here because of me. Both of you. And despite what you think, I don't want you caught in crossfire that isn't your fight. Evelyn sat beside him, the fountain cold against her legs. Lucas thinks I care about what happens to you. He's wrong. Is he? You manipulated me, orchestrated my father's debt, trapped me here. Yes. I should hate you completely. You should. Adrian turned to face her. But you're a terrible liar, Miss Mercer. Your face shows everything you're thinking. And what am I thinking now? That you wish things were different, that you want to hate me but can't quite manage it, that you're terrified of what tomorrow might bring. His hand came up, brushing her cheek with unexpected gentleness, that you're wondering what would happen if you stopped fighting what's between us. Her breath caught. There's nothing between us. Another lie. His thumb traced her jaw. I've watched you for weeks now. The way you lose yourself in the work. The way you argue with me over dinner like it matters what I think. The way you look at me when you think I'm not paying attention. You're imagining things. I'm observant. There's a difference. He leaned closer, and Evelyn knew she should pull away, should stand up, should do anything except sit frozen while her captor's mouth hovered inches from hers. This is insane, she whispered. Probably. His lips brushed hers, barely contact. Tell me to stop. She should. Every rational thought screamed at her to move, to run, to remember that this man had ripped her life apart. Instead, she closed the distance. The kiss was nothing like she expected. Not gentle, but not brutal either. Desperate, like drowning. Adrian's hand tangled in her hair, pulling her closer, and Evelyn let him because somewhere in the past 3 weeks, she'd stopped being just his prisoner and become something far more dangerous. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, reality crashed back. "We can't do this," Evelyn said. "I know. You're holding me here against my will." "I know that too." "Then why?" "Because I'm tired of pretending I don't want you. Because every dinner, every conversation, every time you look at me like I'm a puzzle you're trying to solve, it gets harder to maintain distance." Adrian stood, running a hand through his hair. "But you're right. This is a mistake." "Then why kiss me?" "Because I'm selfish. Because I've wanted to since the moment you challenged me in your father's apartment. Because tomorrow might end badly, and I don't want to die never having done it." He turned away. "Go back inside, Miss Mercer. Get some sleep. Tomorrow you'll pretend this never happened, and I'll do the same. Adrian, go." She went, but the taste of him followed her all the way to her room. The next day moved with dreamlike unreality. Evelyn worked on final touches to the gentility, trying not to think about the kiss, about the meeting, about Lucas's warning. Teresa brought lunch and news that the buyer would arrive at 7. "Wear something elegant," the older woman said. "Mr. Valtieri wants you to look professional. He wants me to look like I belong in his world." "Is there a difference?" Teresa's eyes were kind. "You've been here 3 weeks. You already belong more than you think." At 6, Evelyn showered and found a dress in her wardrobe she hadn't noticed before. Black, simple, expensive. It fit perfectly, which shouldn't have surprised her. Adrian knocked at 6:45. He wore a full suit, dark and perfectly tailored, looking every inch the dangerous man he was. "You look beautiful," he said quietly. "Don't." "Fair enough." He offered his arm. "Ready?" "No." "Also fair. Let's go anyway." The dining room had been transformed into a gallery. The Gentileski hung spotlit on one wall, Judith's rage and triumph blazing in the light. It was breathtaking. Lucas stood near the window, pale but upright, wearing a suit that hung slightly loose on his thinning frame. He smiled when he saw them. The artist and her masterpiece. Beautiful. "It's not mine," Evelyn said. "The restoration is. Artemisia would be proud." He glanced at Adrian. "They're at the gate." Adrian's expression went cold and professional. "Remember the story. Stick to authentication. Let me handle everything else." 3 people entered. 2 were clearly security, but the third made Evelyn's breath stop. The woman was maybe 50, elegant in the way that came from old money, wearing jewelry that probably cost more than Evelyn's entire education. She moved to the painting with the focused intensity of a predator. "Signora Corsini," Adrian said smoothly. "Thank you for coming." Evelyn's blood turned to ice. Corsini, the family that had knifed Lucas, the people threatening to kill everyone in this house. "Mr. Valtieri." The woman's voice was cultured, cold. "You've piqued my interest with this piece. Let's see if it's worth the price you're asking." Adrian gestured to Evelyn. "May I introduce Miss Mercer, the restorer who worked on the piece. She can speak to its authenticity." Signora Corsini's gaze swept over Evelyn, assessing and dismissing in one look. "American?" "Yes. You have credentials?" Evelyn's hands clenched, but she kept her voice steady. 7 years at the Uffizzi's restoration department. 3 years independent work specializing in 16th and 17th century Italian masters. Published research on Artemisia Gentileschi's pigment choices. Impressive. Now convince me this is genuine. For the next hour, Evelyn walked through every detail of the restoration, the authentication process, the technical analysis that confirmed this was Artemisia's work. She spoke about brushstrokes and compositional choices, about the way the artist painted women with agency and rage, about the personal nature of this particular Judith. She didn't mention questionable provenance or the likelihood that this piece belonged in a museum. She played her role perfectly, hating herself for it. Signora Corsini asked pointed questions, testing Evelyn's knowledge, looking for gaps or uncertainty. She found none. "Remarkable," the older woman said finally. "Your restoration work is exceptional, Miss Mercer, The piece is obviously genuine. She turned to Adrian. 6 million, as discussed? 8. Adrian's voice was calm. The market value has increased since our initial conversation, and recent complications have made my resources more valuable. The temperature in the room dropped. Complications. Signora Corsini smiled. You mean the ultimatum? How interesting that you'd use it as leverage. You expected me to roll over because of threats? That's not how I operate. No, you operate by kidnapping young women to authenticate your stolen art. Her gaze flicked to Evelyn. Did you come willingly, Miss Mercer? Or does he have something over you? Evelyn's mind raced. This was a test. Say the wrong thing and everything exploded. I'm here voluntarily, she said, the lie tasting like acid. Mr. Valtieri hired me for a private restoration project. How convenient. Signora Corsini moved closer to Adrian. 8 million is excessive. I'll give you 5, and I won't have my people burn this palazzo to the ground. Consider it a generous offer. Consider it rejected. Adrian didn't flinch. The price is 8 million, non-negotiable. You want the painting, you pay what it's worth. I could simply take it, and everything else. You could try. The tension stretched like a wire about to snap. Lucas had moved to stand near Evelyn, his hand hovering near his jacket where she suspected he had a weapon. Signora Corsini studied Adrian for a long moment, then laughed. You have steel. I'll give you that. 7 million. Final offer. 8. You're willing to die for €1,000,000? I'm willing to die before I let you think you can intimidate me into submission. The painting is 8 million, or it stays on my wall. Another silence. Evelyn could hear her own heartbeat. Fine. 8 million. Signora Corsini gestured to one of her guards, who produced a tablet. I'll have the funds transferred now. You'll provide documentation and transport arrangements. Already prepared. Adrian nodded to Lucas, who produced a folder. The transaction took 15 minutes. Evelyn watched money move in amounts that made her dizzy, watched Adrian maintain perfect composure while negotiating with someone who'd ordered violence against his family. When it was done, Signora Corsini moved to the painting one last time. Beautiful work, Miss Mercer. Wasted on a criminal, but beautiful nonetheless. She glanced back at Adrian. This buys you time. Nothing more. My family still wants what's ours. I'm aware. But now I have resources to make that conversation much more expensive for you. We'll see. She headed for the door, paused. If you're smart, you'll take my nephew's advice. Surrender half, keep the rest. Pride is expensive. So is weakness. After they left, the room stayed silent for a full minute. Then Lucas laughed. That was either brilliant or suicidal. Maybe both. It was necessary. Adrian moved to where the Gentileschi had hung, now empty wall. 8 million buys us weapons, security, leverage. It might buy us survival. Or it makes them angrier. Lucas swayed and Evelyn grabbed his arm. Thanks. Apparently standing for an hour is my limit these days. Get him upstairs, Adrian said to Evelyn. Make sure he rests. I need to make calls. She helped Lucas to his room, supporting his weight as they climbed the stairs. He was frighteningly light. You lied for him, Lucas said when they reached his door, about being here voluntarily. I didn't have a choice. You always have a choice. You chose him. Lucas's smile was knowing. Interesting. Go rest. You look like death. Feel like it too, but that's not news. He caught her hand. Whatever happens next, remember what I said. Stay close to Adrian. He'll keep you safe. Lucas, promise me. I promise. He disappeared into his room, and Evelyn stood in the hallway trying to process everything. Adrian had used her to sell art to the family trying to kill him, had pushed the price up despite the danger, had treated the whole thing like a business transaction instead of a hostage situation. She should be furious, should be planning escape. Instead, she went looking for him. She found Adrian in his study, staring at his computer screen with an expression that made her chest ache. He looked up when she entered. Lucas okay? Exhausted, he's resting. Evelyn closed the door. That was the Corsini family, the people who knifed him. Yes. You sold them art while they're threatening to kill you. I sold them art to fund defending against them. There's a difference. Adrian leaned back. €8 million buys a lot of protection. Or it makes them want to kill you more. Probably, but now they know I won't bend. That's worth something. He studied her. You did well tonight. I'm impressed. I lied for you. You protected yourself. The truth would have complicated things. Everything about this is complicated. Evelyn moved closer. Last night, in the garden, was a mistake. I said so. Then why do I keep thinking about it? Adrian's composure cracked slightly. Because you're trying to make sense of an impossible situation. It's natural to develop feelings for your captor. There's a name for it. Don't. Don't reduce this to psychology. Then what would you call it? I don't know. She was standing in front of his desk now, close enough to see the exhaustion in his eyes. But I know it's more than Stockholm Syndrome. I know that somewhere in the past 3 weeks, you stopped being just my captor and became something else. Something worse. Maybe. Or maybe something I don't have words for yet. She took a breath. The debt. How much is left? Adrian pulled up a file on his computer. €300,000. The Gentileschi sale covered $150,000. So I'm almost halfway free, if that's what you want. Isn't that what you promised? Clear the debt? I go free? Yes. But I'm starting to wonder if you actually want to leave or if you're just telling yourself you should. Adrian stood, coming around the desk. Every day you settle in a little more. You've stopped checking the locks. You arrange flowers in your room now. Last week I caught you humming while you worked. That doesn't mean... It means you're adapting, maybe even finding something worth staying for. His hand came up, cupping her face. Or I'm completely wrong, and you're counting the hours until you can run. Evelyn leaned into his touch, despite herself. I should run. I should hate you. I should want nothing more than to leave. But you don't. I don't know what I want anymore. The admission hurt. You've turned everything upside down. That makes 2 of us. Adrian's thumb brushed her cheekbone. I brought you here for your skills, to solve a problem. But somewhere along the way, you became something I didn't plan for. What? A complication I don't know how to handle. Before she could respond, his phone buzzed. Adrian checked it, expression darkening. What's wrong? The Corsinis just hit one of my warehouses. 2 dead, products seized. He was already moving, grabbing his jacket. Teresa, get Lucas to the safe room. Now. What's happening? War. Adrian's eyes were cold. They wanted to send a message. I'm about to send one back. I'm coming with you. Absolutely not. You said I should stay close. I'm staying close. Evelyn, you're not leaving me here, not knowing if you're coming back. She grabbed his arm. I'm coming. For a moment, she thought he'd refuse. Then he nodded once. Stay in the car, no matter what happens. Understood? Understood. They raced through Rome's midnight streets, Adrian on the phone coordinating with people whose names she didn't know. Lucas had been secured, the palazzo locked down. Now they were heading towards something Evelyn suspected would change everything. The warehouse was burning when they arrived. Flames consumed the warehouse, orange light painting the industrial district in hellish colors. Adrian's car screeched to a stop 50 yards away, close enough to see the devastation, far enough to avoid the worst of the heat. Stay here. Adrian was already out, moving toward a cluster of men near an ambulance. Evelyn watched through the window as he spoke with them, his posture rigid. One man gestured at the warehouse, then at 2 bodies covered with tarps. Adrian's hand clenched into a fist, the only sign of emotion on his otherwise controlled face. She should stay in the car, should follow orders for once. Instead, she got out. The heat hit her immediately, waves of it rolling off the burning building. Adrian turned sharply when he noticed her approach. I told you to stay. Who were they? She nodded at the covered bodies. Marco and Stefano. Good men. Loyal. His jaw was tight. They didn't deserve to burn for someone else's message. One of Adrian's men, older with graying hair, spoke rapidly in Italian. Evelyn caught enough to understand. Witnesses saw 3 cars, Corsini family vehicles. They'd arrived with accelerant and guns. How many inside when it went up? Adrian asked in English. Just Marco and Stefano. Everyone else was at the east facility. The man's voice was rough. Lucky timing. Not luck. They wanted minimal casualties, maximum impact. They want me scared, not decimated. Adrian's phone buzzed. He answered, listened, then his expression went deadly calm. When? How many? Evelyn's stomach dropped at his tone. Understood. Lock it down. No one in or out. He ended the call. They hit the palazzo. Guards drove them off, but they're testing our defenses. Lucas is safe. Teresa has him in the panic room with enough supplies for 3 days. Adrian turned to his men. Double security at all properties. Move the families to the safe houses. And find me Signor Corsini's nephew, the one who actually runs their operations. I want a meeting. Boss, they just hit us twice in one night. A meeting is exactly what we need. They think I'll react with violence. I'll give them negotiation instead. Throw them off balance. Adrian's eyes glinted. Set it up. Neutral ground, tomorrow night. The men dispersed, leaving Evelyn alone with Adrian in the warehouse's glow. You can't negotiate with people who are burning your property, she said. I'm not negotiating. I'm getting them in a room where I control the variables. He started back toward the car. Come on, we need to move before they decide a third target is a good idea. They drove in silence, Adrian's hands white-knuckled on the wheel. Evelyn watched Rome blur past, thinking about Marco and Stefano, about Lucas hiding in a panic room, about how quickly violence had erupted. Why did you really bring me tonight? She asked finally. Because I didn't want you at the palazzo if they hit it again. You could have sent me somewhere safe. Nowhere's safe right now. At least with me, I know where you are. Adrian took a sharp turn. And because you were right. If something happened, I wanted you there. That's insane. Probably. Add it to the list. They didn't return to the palazzo. Instead, Adrian drove to a building in Prati, upscale and anonymous, using a key card to access underground parking. The elevator required another card and a code. Safe house, he explained. The Corsinis know about it, but hitting it would escalate beyond what they want. Yet. The apartment was modern, sterile, nothing like the palazzo's historic elegance. Adrian locked the door behind them, engaged what looked like a sophisticated security system, then finally allowed himself to sag against the wall. 2 men dead, he said quietly. 2 good men because I wouldn't bow to threats. This isn't your fault. It's entirely my fault. I chose to push the price up tonight, chose to stand my ground. They died for my pride. Evelyn moved closer. They died because the Corsinis are willing to kill people. That's not on you. You don't understand. In this world, every choice has consequences. I chose defiance, and Marco and Stefano paid for it. He pushed off the wall, moved to the window. Lucas always said I let pride cloud my judgment. He's right. Lucas also said you're less terrible than I think. That got a ghost of a smile. He's an optimist. He's dying and still tries to see the best in people. That says something about how you raised him. Adrian turned. I didn't raise him. I survived him. There's a difference. Don't do that. Don't pretend you're not terrified of losing him. Of course I'm terrified. He's 26 years old and his body is failing piece by piece. I can buy him the best doctors, the best treatments, the best life money can afford, but I can't buy him more time. His voice cracked. So yes, I'm terrified and angry and so tired of pretending I'm in control when I'm not. Evelyn had never seen him like this, raw and undone. The Adrian Valtieri who'd walked into her father's apartment had been all cold precision. This man was coming apart at the seams. She crossed the distance between them, took his hands. You don't have to pretend with me. Don't I? You're here because I manipulated circumstances, because I needed your skills and saw an opportunity. That doesn't exactly inspire trust. No, but these past weeks have. She squeezed his hands. I see how you are with Lucas, how you treat Teresa, your men, even me when you think I'm not paying attention. You're not the monster you pretend to be. Maybe I'm just better at hiding it. Or maybe you're so used to being what people expect that you've forgotten who you actually are. She paused. Who are you, Adrian? Under all the carefully constructed power and control. He stared at her for a long moment. I don't know anymore. I've been playing a role so long I can't remember what's real. This feels real. She placed his hand over her heart where it hammered against her ribs. Whatever this is between us, it feels real. It's complicated. Everything about us is complicated. That doesn't make it less real. Adrian's thumb brushed along her collarbone. You should hate me. You should want nothing more than to leave. I know, but I kissed you back in the garden. I lied for you tonight. I followed you to a burning warehouse because the thought of not knowing if you were safe made me feel like I was drowning. She met his eyes. So either I'm losing my mind or something changed. When? I don't know. Maybe when you told me about Lucas, maybe before. Maybe it's been happening in small pieces since the beginning and I just didn't want to see it. This is insane. You keep saying that. She pulled him closer. But you're not pulling away. I should. But you won't. Adrian's control finally snapped. He kissed her hard, one hand tangling in her hair, the other pulling her against him. Evelyn responded with equal desperation, months of tension and anger and something deeper pouring into the contact. They broke apart, breathing hard. I can't promise you anything, Adrian said. Tomorrow I might be dead. The Corsinis might burn everything I've built. Lucas might... He couldn't finish. I'm not asking for promises, I'm asking for tonight. That's all I have to give. Then give me that. He kissed her again, slower this time, and Evelyn let herself fall into it, let herself stop analyzing and questioning and just feel. His hands on her skin, his mouth trailing fire down her throat, the desperate need in the way he held her like she might disappear. They made it to the bedroom in a tangle of limbs and shed clothing. Adrian was careful with her, almost reverent, asking permission with every touch. Evelyn gave it, lost in the sensation of being wanted with this kind of intensity. Afterwards, they lay tangled in unfamiliar sheets, listening to Rome's distant sounds through bulletproof windows. I watched you for months before your father's death, Adrian said quietly. Studied your routine, learned your habits. I told myself it was professional interest, that I needed to know if you were suitable for what I had planned. But somewhere along the way it stopped being professional. I'd catch myself checking surveillance feeds just to see you, wondering what you were thinking, what made you smile. It was obsessive and wrong, and I did it anyway. Evelyn should feel violated, should feel angry. Instead, she felt something else. You could have just asked me to work for you, offered to pay for my services. Would you have said yes? Probably not. Exactly. I needed leverage. But I also wanted you here, wanted you close in a way that had nothing to do with art or business. His hand traced patterns on her shoulder. That's the truth. I'm obsessed with you. I've been obsessed for months, and I used your father's debt as an excuse to keep you. That's terrifying. I know. It should make me run. I know that too. Evelyn turned to face him. But here's the thing. I've spent my whole life avoiding connection. After my mother left, after foster care, after watching my father destroy everything he touched, I decided being alone was safer, easier. She traced the line of his jaw. Then you showed up and ripped apart every wall I'd built. And somewhere in the chaos, I realized I wasn't running from you anymore. What are you doing? I have no idea. Probably making the worst decision of my life. She kissed him softly. But at least it's my decision, not my father's debt, or your manipulation or circumstance. Mine. Adrian pulled her closer. The debt is almost cleared. Another month, maybe 2, and you're free to go. And if I don't want to go, then you stay, on your terms, not mine. What would that look like? I don't know. I've never done this before. The actual wanting someone to stay part. His smile was self-deprecating. I'm good at control and manipulation, terrible at honest relationships. We'll figure it out, or we'll crash and burn spectacularly. Also possible, Evelyn settled against his chest. For what it's worth, I think you're better at this than you think. What makes you say that? Because for all your talk about control, you're letting me choose. That's more than most men would do. They fell asleep tangled together, and for a few hours Evelyn let herself believe it could actually work. Dawn came too soon. Adrian's phone buzzed at 6, dragging them both awake. The meeting's set, he said after reading the message. Tonight, 9 o'clock. Abandoned factory in Ostiense. The nephew, Antonio Corsini, will be there. Is that safe? Absolutely not, but it's necessary. He kissed her forehead. I need to get back to the palazzo, check on Lucas, coordinate security. I'm coming. Evelyn, we're not doing this again. Where you go, I go. You don't get to protect me by shutting me out. Adrian looked like he wanted to argue, then nodded. Fine, but you follow my lead. If things go bad, you run. Understood? Understood. They dressed quickly, and Adrian made a phone call to ensure the palazzo was secure. Lucas was still in the safe room, refusing to come out until Adrian personally gave the all-clear. The drive back was tense. Adrian kept checking mirrors, taking random turns, clearly watching for tails. When they finally pulled into the palazzo's courtyard, guards were everywhere. Lucas met them at the door, looking exhausted but alive. He took one look at them and grinned. So you two finally figured it out, about time. Shut up, Adrian said without heat. I've been watching this dance for weeks. Painful, honestly. All that tension. Lucas's expression sobered. Teresa told me about Marco and Stefano. I'm sorry. They knew the risks. Adrian's voice was flat. I'll make sure their families are taken care of. That doesn't make it hurt less. No, it doesn't. Adrian moved towards his study. I need to prepare for tonight. Lucas, you stay here with Teresa. Evelyn is coming with you tonight, she finished. Lucas's eyebrows rose. To the Corsini meeting? That's her choice, Adrian said. And before you argue, I already tried. Fair enough. Lucas studied them both. Just promise me you'll both come back. I'm not ready to plan a funeral, either of yours. The weight of that hung heavy. Adrian gripped his brother's shoulder. We'll be careful. You're meeting with people who burned your warehouse. Careful doesn't seem like an option. But Lucas stepped back. Go. Do what you need to do. I'll be here when you get back. Evelyn spent the day in her studio trying to work on a new piece Adrian had brought in, a damaged Caravaggio that needed extensive restoration. But her mind kept drifting to the meeting, to what could go wrong, to the possibility that tonight might end in violence. Adrian appeared at 6, dressed in dark clothes, no suit this time, more practical. You don't have to do this, he said. I know. If something happens, don't. She set down her brush. Don't say goodbye like we're not coming back. I'm being realistic. You're being pessimistic. There's a difference. She crossed to him. We're going to walk in there, you're going to negotiate or intimidate or whatever you do, and we're going to walk out, together. You sound certain. I'm choosing to be. She kissed him. Now let's go before I lose my nerve. The factory was exactly as ominous as Evelyn expected. Broken windows, graffiti-covered walls, the kind of place where deals went bad and bodies disappeared. Adrian's men had already secured the perimeter, but tension vibrated in the air. Last chance to stay in the car, Adrian said. Not happening. They walked in together. The main factory floor was cavernous, lit by industrial lights someone had rigged up. Antonio Corsini waited in the center with 4 guards, young and sharp-featured, wearing expensive casual clothes like this was a business meeting instead of a potential execution. Mr. Valtieri, punctual as always. Antonio's smile didn't reach his eyes. And you brought a guest. How unexpected. Miss Mercer is my associate. She stays. Adrian's voice was level. Your associate or your leverage? I've heard interesting things about her presence in your home. Antonio's gaze swept over Evelyn. Tell me, Miss Mercer, are you here voluntarily? The question was a trap. Answer wrong, and Adrian looked weak. Answer right, and she lied again. I'm here because I choose to be, she said carefully. Fascinating. Antonio turned back to Adrian. My aunt tells me you were quite insistent on price last night. $8 million for a painting, even while we were burning your property. Impressive nerve. The painting's value doesn't change based on external circumstances. But leverage does. You needed that money to fund this little war, didn't you? To hire more guards, buy more weapons, fortify your crumbling empire. My empire is hardly crumbling. 2 dead men, a warehouse in ashes, and you're meeting with me in an abandoned factory because your own properties aren't secure. That sounds like crumbling to me. Antonio moved closer. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to give us 60% of your operations. The profitable 60%. You'll keep the scraps, we'll keep the peace, and nobody else has to die. Generous, but no. Then we'll take it all, starting with your brother. Adrian went very still. You touch Lucas, and I'll burn your entire family to the ground. Every single one of you. Threats from a weakened position. How quaint. Antonio gestured, and his guards moved forward. Adrian's men responded instantly, weapons appearing. The factory floor became a standoff. You want to do this now? Adrian's voice was cold. Here? You'll lose half your men before you take me down, and you'll lose me as a source of revenue. Is that really what you want? Antonio hesitated, clearly calculating. You're bluffing. Try me. You think I built this empire by backing down from threats? You want my operations? Come and take them. But understand that it will cost you everything you have, and when the dust settles, someone else will be running the Corsini family. Because you'll be dead. The silence stretched like broken glass. Then Antonio laughed. You're insane, but I respect it. He waved his men back. Fine, counteroffer, 40%. You pick which operations. We both profit. Nobody else dies. 25%. And you leave Lucas alone, permanently. 35. And we get approval on your major deals. 30. No approval rights, you get your cut, but you don't get control. Antonio considered, then nodded. 30%. We'll draft terms tomorrow. But if you violate them, if you try to cut us out or cheat us, we won't negotiate again. Understood. And if your people hit any more of my properties, the deal is void, and we settle this the old way. Agreed. Antonio extended his hand. Adrian shook it, the gesture formal and binding. Pleasure doing business with you, Mr. Valtieri. Even if you are a pain in the ass. Likewise, Mr. Corsini. Antonio's men filed out first. Adrian waited until they were gone before releasing a breath. That was insane, Evelyn said. That was survival. 30% is better than total war. Adrian turned to his men. Get the lawyers working on contracts. I want ironclad terms by tomorrow. They left the factory, Evelyn's hands shaking with adrenaline. She just watched Adrian negotiate his way out of a death sentence, trade pieces of his empire for Lucas's safety, and walk away like it was routine business. You would have fought them, she said in the car. If they'd said no, you would have let it end in violence. Yes. Over 30%? Over my brother. Over principle. Over not being controlled by threats. Adrian's hands were steady on the wheel. That's who I am, Evelyn. Someone willing to burn everything down rather than submit. You should understand that before this goes any further. I think I already did. I just hadn't seen it up close. She reached over, took his hand. You're terrifying, you know that? So I've been told. They arrived at the palazzo to find Lucas pacing the entrance hall despite Teresa's protests. He looked up when they entered, relief flooding his face. You're alive. Both of you. Thank Christ. We're fine. Deal's made. 30% to the Corsinis in exchange for peace. Adrian pulled his brother into a hug. And they leave you alone. That was non-negotiable. Lucas pulled back. You traded your empire for me. I traded part of it. And yes, for you. Obviously. Adrian, don't. You're my brother. My only family that matters. I'd trade all of it if it kept you safe. Adrian's voice was rough. Now go rest. You look like you're about to fall over. After Lucas disappeared upstairs, Adrian turned to Evelyn. You saw everything tonight. The violence I'm capable of, the world I operate in, the choices I make. Are you sure you want this? Evelyn thought about the past weeks, the manipulation that had brought her here, the slow erosion of her anger, the moment she'd stopped seeing Adrian as her captor and started seeing him as something else. She thought about Lucas's trust, about Marco and Stefano dying for Adrian's decisions, about the kiss in the garden and the desperate honesty in the safe house. I'm sure, she said. Whatever this is, I'm choosing it. Even knowing I orchestrated your father's debt, that I manipulated everything to get you here? Even knowing that. Because despite everything, despite the manipulation and the imprisonment and the impossibility of it all, I think you actually see me. Not the quiet restorer who avoided connection, not the daughter of a con man, not the skill you needed to acquire. Me. She moved closer. And I see you, the man terrified of losing his brother, the criminal with a code, the person so obsessed with control because everything else in your life was chaos. Adrian kissed her, soft and careful, like she might disappear. The debt. he said when they broke apart. Consider it cleared, completely. Stay because you want to, not because you're obligated. What about my father's 400,000? I'll write it off. Call it the cost of keeping you. His smile was wry. Besides, you've given me 8 million euros worth of work. We'll call it even. Just like that? I'm free? Just like that. You're free. He paused. So what do you want to do with your freedom? Evelyn looked around the palazzo, this place that had been her prison and was slowly becoming something else. She thought about her old studio, her careful routine, the life she'd built on safety and isolation. Then she thought about watching Adrian negotiate with death in an abandoned factory, about Lucas's grin despite dying, about Teresa's quiet wisdom, about work that challenged her, dinners that felt like home, a connection she'd never expected to find. I want to stay, she said. At least for now, see where this goes. Even knowing it might end badly? Everything might end badly. That's not a reason to avoid it. Adrian pulled her close. Then stay, for as long as you want. They stood there in the palazzo's entrance hall, and Evelyn let herself believe it might actually work. That she could build something with a man who'd kidnapped her. That freedom and captivity weren't always opposites. That sometimes the cage door opened and you chose to stay anyway. It was insane, complicated, probably a disaster waiting to happen, but it was hers. Finally, something that was completely hers. The peace lasted exactly 8 days. Evelyn should have known better than to trust it, should have recognized the quiet for what it was. The breath before the storm, not the calm after. But she'd let herself believe, let herself settle into a rhythm that felt almost normal. Morning coffee with Adrian, hours in the studio restoring pieces that were beautiful and stolen, and somehow hers now. Dinners with Lucas where they argued about art and architecture while Teresa pretended not to smile. She'd even stopped checking the locks on her door at night, though Adrian rarely let her sleep there anymore. His bed had become theirs without either of them discussing it. Another line crossed in a series of lines that had blurred beyond recognition. On the 8th day, everything shattered. Evelyn was working on a Tintoretto when Teresa burst into the studio, face white. Miss Mercer, you need to come, now. The urgency in her voice killed any questions. Evelyn dropped her brush and ran. She found Adrian in his study, phone pressed to his ear, expression carved from ice. Lucas sat across from him, doubled over, blood on his shirt. Not from violence this time. He was coughing it up. When did this start? Adrian was asking someone, probably a doctor. An hour ago, Lucas wheezed. Wasn't bad at first, then another coughing fit. More blood. Evelyn grabbed towels from the bathroom, pressed them into Lucas's hands. His skin was gray, lips tinged blue. This was beyond the usual fatigue, the slow decline they'd all been watching. This was crisis. Ambulance is 5 minutes out, Adrian said, ending the call. His hand shook as he knelt beside his brother. Stay with me. You hear me? Stay with me. Always so dramatic. Lucas tried to smile, but it came out as a grimace. Probably just overdid it today. You sat in the garden and read. That's not overdoing it. For me, it is. More blood. Lucas's breathing was labored, each inhale a visible struggle. Adrian, if this is... It's not. You're fine. The doctors will fix it. But Evelyn could see the lie in his eyes, could feel the terror radiating off him in waves. Lucas was dying, had been dying for years, but this was different. This was the body finally giving up. The ambulance arrived, paramedics swarming with equipment in urgent Italian. They loaded Lucas onto a stretcher, started an IV, asked rapid-fire questions Adrian answered with mechanical precision. I'm coming, Evelyn said as they carried Lucas toward the door. Adrian shook his head. It's not safe. The Corsinis? I don't care about the Corsinis. Lucas needs you, and you need someone. I'm coming. For once, he didn't argue. The hospital was private, exclusive, the kind of place where money bought discretion and the best care in Italy. They rushed Lucas into emergency treatment while Adrian and Evelyn were directed to a waiting room that felt more like a luxury hotel lobby. Adrian stood at the window, staring out at Rome without seeing it. He's going to be okay, Evelyn said, knowing it was probably a lie. You don't know that. No, But the alternative is thinking about him dying, and that doesn't help anyone right now. Adrian's laugh was bitter. I've been thinking about him dying for 3 years. Every day watching him get weaker, knowing there's nothing I can do, all the money in the world, and I can't buy him more time. You've given him the best possible time. That matters. Does it? When he's coughing up blood at 26 because his genetics decided to fail him? When every experimental treatment buys him another few months at best? Adrian slammed his hand against the window. I'd trade everything. The palazzo, the business, every painting, and every euro. All of it for just 1 more year with him. Evelyn moved to stand beside him. I know. You don't. You can't. He's the only family I have that's worth anything. Our father was a monster. Our mother died when Lucas was 12, and I raised him. Me. I taught him to tie his shoes and do his homework and think for himself. And now I have to watch him die, and there's nothing I can do. The pain in his voice was raw, completely unguarded. This wasn't the controlled criminal or the calculated businessman. This was a man falling apart. You're not watching him die alone, Evelyn said quietly. I'm here. Teresa's here. You have people. I don't want people. I want my brother to live. A doctor appeared before she could respond, expression carefully neutral in a way that made Evelyn's stomach drop. Mr. Valtieri, your brother is stable for now. We've managed to stop the bleeding and get his oxygen levels up. But I need to be honest with you. His condition has deteriorated significantly. The treatments aren't working anymore. Then try something else. Different drugs, different protocols. I don't care what it costs. It's not about cost. His heart and lungs are failing. We can make him comfortable, manage his symptoms, but there's no cure. Not anymore. The doctor's voice was gentle. I'm sorry. At this point, it's about quality of life, not quantity. How long? Adrian's voice cracked. Weeks. Maybe a month if we're lucky. The words landed like bullets. Adrian swayed and Evelyn grabbed his arm, keeping him upright. Can we see him? She asked. Briefly. He needs rest, but I know he'll want to see you. Lucas looked impossibly small in the hospital bed, tubes and monitors reducing him to a collection of failing systems. But when they entered, he opened his eyes and tried to smile. So, weeks, huh? Could be worse. Don't. Adrian's voice was rough. Don't make jokes. Well, why not? It's funny in a horrible sort of way. I've been dying for years, and it turns out the timeline was more of a suggestion. Lucas reached for Adrian's hand. Come here. Stop hovering like I'm already gone. Adrian sank into the chair beside the bed, gripping his brother's hand like a lifeline. I'm going to find another doctor. Get a second opinion. There has to be something. There isn't. We both know that. Lucas's voice was tired but clear. I've made peace with it. Now you need to? I can't. You have to, because I need you to do something for me, and you can't do it if you're falling apart. Anything. Name it. Lucas looked at Evelyn. Take care of him. When I'm gone, he's going to try to bury himself in work and rage and all his usual control mechanisms. Don't let him. Lucas, I can't promise. Yes, you can. You're the only person he actually listens to. The only one who makes him remember he's human. Lucas coughed, grimaced. Promise me. Evelyn looked at Adrian, saw the devastation in his eyes, and made a choice. I promise. Good. Lucas closed his eyes. Now, both of you go away. I'm tired and you're depressing. I'm not leaving, Adrian said. Yes, you are. You have a meeting with the Corsinis tomorrow about the contracts. You need to sleep, shower, be functional. Lucas opened one eye. I'll still be here tomorrow, probably. The doctors seem fairly confident about that part. Lucas, go. I mean it. Teresa will stay with me. You go take care of business, take care of her. He nodded at Evelyn. And come back tomorrow when you're less of a mess. Adrian looked like he wanted to argue, but Teresa appeared in the doorway as if summoned. I'll watch him, she said. You go. Handle what needs handling. They left because Lucas asked, but Adrian was silent the entire drive back to the palazzo. Evelyn didn't try to fill the silence, just stayed close, a steady presence in the passenger seat. The palazzo felt empty without Lucas's energy filling it. Adrian went straight to his study, pulled out files on the Corsini deal, and tried to work. Evelyn watched him for 10 minutes before taking the papers from his hands. You're not going to absorb any of this right now. I have to. The meeting's tomorrow. If I show weakness, then show weakness. You're human. Your brother is dying. Anyone who expects you to be emotionless about that is an asshole. That's not how this world works. Then change how it works. She pulled him to his feet. Come on, you need sleep. I can't. Every time I close my eyes, I see him coughing up blood. Then I'll sit with you until you can. Evelyn led him upstairs, pushed him toward the bathroom. Shower, I'll make tea or find whiskey or whatever you need. When he emerged 20 minutes later, she'd found both. Adrian took the whiskey, drank it in one swallow, then sank onto the bed. I don't know how to do this, he said quietly. How to watch him die. One day at a time. 1 hour if that's all you can manage. What if one day I wake up and he's gone? What if I'm not there? Then you weren't there, and it will hurt, and you'll survive it, because that's what people do. Evelyn sat beside him. But you're not there yet. He's alive right now. Focus on that. Adrian pulled her against him, face buried in her shoulder. She felt wetness there, realized he was crying for the first time since this started. Silent, shaking sobs that tore through him. She held him until he fell asleep, exhaustion finally winning over grief. The next morning brought the reality Adrian had been avoiding. The meeting with Antonio Corsini couldn't be postponed. Too much money, too much at stake. Adrian dressed in armor disguised as a suit and tried to become the man who negotiated with death threats like they were business proposals. I'm coming, Evelyn said. No, it's too dangerous with Lucas in the hospital. If they know he's vulnerable, they already know. You think they don't have people watching? I'm coming because you need someone there who gives a damn whether you survive this. The meeting was at a restaurant in Trastevere, upscale and public enough that violence seemed unlikely. Antonio arrived with his aunt, Signora Corsini, both wearing expressions that suggested they knew about Lucas. Mr. Valtieri. Antonio's greeting was professional. I heard about your brother. My condolences. He's not dead yet. Of course. Poor phrasing. Antonio gestured to the table. Shall we discuss terms? They spent 2 hours haggling over percentages and territories, Adrian matching Antonio point for point despite the exhaustion evident in his face. Evelyn watched the performance, watched him compartmentalize grief into something manageable, watched him become the criminal everyone expected. The contracts were signed over expensive wine, 30% of Adrian's operations to the Corsinis in exchange for peace and guaranteed non-interference with Lucas's medical care. Your brother will receive the best treatment available, Signora Corsini said. We're not monsters, Mr. Valtieri. Family matters. Does it? You threatened to kill him last week. Threatened, yes. Would never have followed through. There are lines even we don't cross. Her expression was almost sympathetic. I hope he surprises the doctors. Stranger things have happened. After they left, Adrian sat staring at the contracts. I just traded my life's work for a promise they might not keep, he said. You traded it for Lucas's safety. There's a difference. Is there? In a month he'll be gone anyway, and I'll have given away 30% of my empire for nothing. Not for nothing, for peace of mind, for knowing you did everything possible. Evelyn took his hand. You can rebuild the business. You can't bring him back. They returned to the hospital to find Lucas awake and arguing with his doctor about being allowed to eat solid food. Finally, he said when he saw them, tell this tyrant I'm perfectly capable of eating a sandwich. You aspirated yesterday, the doctor said patiently. Solid food is a choking risk. Everything's a risk. I'm dying anyway. Let me enjoy a damn sandwich. Adrian laughed despite himself. Give him the sandwich. What's the worst that could happen? He could choke and die 12 hours sooner. Then I'll die happy with a sandwich in my stomach instead of this hospital pudding. Lucas looked at Adrian. How'd the meeting go? Signed the contracts, 30% to the Corsinis. They've guaranteed your medical care stays uninterrupted. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. You're my brother. I'd give them everything if it meant keeping you safe. Lucas's expression softened. I know. That's why I love you, even though you're a controlling pain in the ass. He glanced at Evelyn. He treating you okay? Not being too much of a tyrant? Surprisingly decent, actually. Good, because I have a favor to ask both of you. Lucas struggled to sit up. When I'm gone, I don't want you burying yourself in guilt and work. I want you to actually live, travel, fall in love properly. Do something that isn't crime or art restoration for 5 minutes. Lucas, I mean it. You've spent 3 years putting your life on hold for me. When I'm gone, I want you to remember how to exist for yourself. He looked at Evelyn. And you, keep challenging him. Don't let him turn back into that cold bastard who manipulated his way into getting what he wanted. Make him work for it. I can do that. I know you can. That's why I like you. Lucas lay back, exhausted from the outburst. Now everyone leave. I need to nap before they bring me that sandwich I'm definitely going to get. Over the next 3 weeks, they fell into a rhythm. Adrian spent mornings handling business, afternoons at the hospital, evenings pretending everything was fine until it wasn't. Lucas's decline was visible, each day stealing a little more color, a little more strength. Evelyn divided her time between the studio and the hospital, sometimes working on restorations while Lucas dozed, sometimes just talking about nothing important. She learned about his architecture dreams, his failed relationships, his complicated feelings about the family business he'd never wanted to join. I'm glad he has you, Lucas said one afternoon. Adrian, I mean, he's less alone. He has Teresa, his men. That's not the same. Teresa's family, but she's staff. His men are loyal, but scared of him. You're the first person I've seen treat him like an actual human being. Lucas smiled. He needs that. Needs someone who'll call him on his bullshit. I'm good at that part. I noticed. It's perfect. His breathing was labored. Oxygen cannula a permanent fixture now. Promise me something else? What? Don't let him use my death as an excuse to push you away. He's going to try. He's going to decide he's too broken or dangerous or whatever story he tells himself. Don't let him. Lucas, I can't make him. Yes, you can. You're stubborn enough. Promise. I promise. He died on a Tuesday morning, 3 weeks and 2 days after the first crisis. Teresa was with him, reading aloud from a book about Renaissance architecture while he drifted in and out. He opened his eyes one last time, smiled at something only he could see, and stopped breathing. Adrian was in a meeting with lawyers when he got the call. Evelyn watched him take it, watched his face go blank, watched him end the call and stand without a word. Adrian? She said. He's gone. The funeral was small, private. Just the people who'd actually known Lucas beyond his last name. Adrian delivered a eulogy that was brief and controlled, talking about his brother's humor and kindness, and dreams that would never be realized. He didn't cry, didn't break, maintained perfect composure. It was only later, when everyone had left and they were alone in the palazzo, that he finally fell apart. Evelyn found him in Lucas's room, sitting on the bed, holding one of his brother's architecture books. He wanted to design buildings, Adrian said, beautiful, impossible structures that would last centuries. He had notebooks full of sketches, and he'll never get to build any of them. She sat beside him, took his hand. I know I'm supposed to say something profound, about how he's at peace or his suffering is over. But all I can think is that he was 26 and he should have had 50 more years. Adrian's voice cracked. And I'd trade everything to give them to him. I know. Do you? Because you're still here and he's not. And some part of me wonders if I made the wrong choice, if I should have focused on him instead of... He gestured between them. This. Don't. Don't make his death about us. Why not? I brought you here because I was obsessed, manipulated your life to fit my needs. Maybe if I'd focused on Lucas instead, he still would have died. The timeline didn't change because you fell in love with me. Adrian went very still. What did you say? Evelyn realized what she'd admitted, but didn't take it back. You're in love with me. You have been for months. You're just too scared to say it. That's insane. So is everything else about us. But it's still true. She cupped his face, made him look at her. You orchestrated my father's debt because you couldn't stand the thought of not having me close. You cleared that debt because you wanted me to choose you freely. You're falling apart right now, not just because Lucas died, but because you're terrified I'll leave and you'll be alone again. Evelyn, I'm not leaving. Not because of debt or obligation or Stockholm Syndrome or whatever story you tell yourself. I'm staying because Lucas was right. I'm in love with you too. And I'm not going to let you use his death as an excuse to push me away. Adrian stared at her like she'd spoken a foreign language. You can't be in love with me. I kidnapped you. You claimed collateral on a debt. We've established this. She smiled despite the tears on her face. And yeah, it was morally questionable at best, but somewhere along the way it stopped being about that and became something else. Something real. I don't deserve you. Probably not, but you have me anyway. She kissed him softly. So what are you going to do with that? For a long moment he just looked at her. Then he kissed her back, desperate and grateful and terrified all at once. Stay, he said against her mouth. Please stay. I already promised Lucas I would. I don't break promises. They held each other in Lucas's room, grieving and healing in the same breath. The next months were hard. Adrian threw himself into reshaping his operations, working 18-hour days to avoid the empty spaces Lucas had left behind. Evelyn worked alongside him, sometimes restoring art, sometimes just being present when the grief got too heavy. They fought about his workaholism, about her tendency to push too hard, about the fundamental impossibility of building something healthy on a foundation of manipulation. But they also laughed and loved and slowly figured out what it meant to choose each other every day. 6 months after Lucas died, Adrian came home early for the first time since the funeral. I have a proposition, he said. Evelyn looked up from the Caravaggio she was restoring. I've learned to be suspicious of your propositions. Fair, but hear me out. He pulled out a folder. I'm restructuring the business, going legitimate with most of it. Art acquisition through proper channels, consulting for museums, authentication services. Boring, legal, significantly less lucrative. Why? Because Lucas asked me to actually live, and I can't do that constantly looking over my shoulder. Adrian sat beside her. But I need a partner, someone who knows art, who isn't afraid to challenge me, who can tell clients to go to hell when necessary. You want me to go into business with you? I want you to build something with me, something that doesn't require armed guards and burning warehouses, something we can be proud of. Evelyn studied him. What about the other 30%? The Corsini deal? They can have it, all of it. I'm done with that world. His expression was open, honest. I want a life with you, a real one. No more manipulation, no more debt, just us figuring out how to make this work. That's terrifying. Absolutely, but also worth it, if you're willing. She thought about the past 9 months, about arriving as a prisoner and leaving as a partner, about watching Adrian transform from cold criminal to someone capable of love and grief and change, about choosing to stay when she could have run. I'm willing, she said, on one condition. Name it. We start a foundation for young artists who don't have resources. Fund their education, give them opportunities, something that would make Lucas proud. Adrian's smile was the first genuine one she'd seen since his brother's death. The Lucas Valtieri Foundation for Architectural and Artistic Excellence. I like it. Presumptuous to assume I wanted his name on it. He'd haunt me if I didn't. Besides, he'd love the irony, a criminal's money funding legitimate dreams. They worked late into the night, sketching out plans for a business that dealt in beauty instead of threat, for a foundation that would give others the opportunities Lucas never got to have. A year later, Evelyn stood in the newly renovated gallery space, watching wealthy collectors browse pieces she and Adrian had acquired through proper channels, complete with documentation and provenance. It was boring compared to the high-stakes drama of stolen art, but it was theirs. Adrian appeared at her elbow, champagne in hand. Successful opening. 12 pieces sold, 3 more with serious interest. Not bad for legitimate work. Who knew honesty could be profitable? He handed her a glass. I have something for you. He pulled out a small box. Inside was a ring, antique, probably 18th century, emerald surrounded by diamonds. Before you panic, this isn't what you think. Or maybe it is. I don't know. I'm terrible at this. Adrian took the ring out. I love you. I've loved you since before I had any right to. And I know I started this by manipulating your life and trapping you in my house, but somehow you stayed anyway. You chose me when you had every reason to run. Adrian, let me finish. I'm not asking you to marry me right now. I'm asking if someday, when we've built something real together, when you're absolutely sure this is what you want, I'm asking if you'd consider letting me be that lucky. Evelyn looked at the ring, at the man holding it, at the gallery they'd built together from the ashes of his old life. Yes, she said. Yes, you'll consider it, or yes, I'll marry you someday when we're ready, when we've proven we can do this without burning it all down. She held out her hand. But I'll wear the ring now, as a promise. Adrian slipped it on her finger, and Evelyn realized this was what freedom actually looked like. Not running from the cage, but choosing to stay and transform it into something beautiful. They stood together in their gallery, survivors of their own story, and chose each other one more time. Across town, in a cemetery Evelyn visited weekly, Lucas Valtieri rested under a headstone that read, "Architect of Dreams, Builder of Hope." His foundation had just funded its first class of students, 12 young artists who'd never have had the chance otherwise. The woman who'd arrived at the palazzo as payment for a debt had become someone who paid it forward. The man who'd orchestrated her captivity had become someone who created opportunities instead of taking them. It wasn't a perfect ending. They still fought about Adrian's tendency to make decisions without consulting her. Evelyn still had nightmares about the burning warehouse. The palazzo held ghosts they'd never fully banish, but they were building something real from the wreckage, one careful choice at a time. And that, Evelyn thought, as Adrian pulled her close in their gallery full of beautiful things acquired honestly, was more than enough.